Worry is like a heckler. Chronic worry is like a heckler in the audience at the performance. Dealing with the heckler requires a particular kind of response. As a performer, it won't help to go down in the audience and have a first fight with the heckler because that prevents you from delivering the performance you come for. Neither will it have to defend yourself against the heckler comment because then you are arguing with the heckler rather than doing your show. And it won't do to try and ignore the heckling either, because it will be noticeable no matter how hard you try not to notice. And struggling not to notice will distract you from the task at hand. You could perhaps ask the heckler to stop, but generally speaking, hecklers do not respond to simple requests to be reasonable. Your request will probably fall on deaf ears and the heckling will continue. Meanwhile, you have again been distracted from your task. What's going way to respond to a heckler? It's probably best to work the heckler into your routine. This way, you have to choose between going on with your show or daily business and listening to the heckler. And as you work with the heckling in this way, treating it like you would like any other sounds in the room. The heckling in this way, treating it like you would any other sounds in the room, the heckling will probably die down. What keeps heckling going in the sense that the heckling is getting attention and being disruptive? As it starts to blend in with the show, it will probably diminish. Are you being heckled by your own thoughts? What does it mean when you find yourself getting heckled by your own thoughts? As we saw in chapter 4, it means you are nervous. That's probably all it means, not in danger, just nervous. You could run a quick check with the two-part test from chapter 2 if you want. Suppose you get an email from a Nigerian prince in which he offered to share a fortune in gold with you. He just needs to give you he just needs you to give him access to your bank account so he can transfer it to you. If you take the content of this email at face value, if you take it to mean that you will soon be rich, you are going to get suckered. However, if you read the content of the email and make an interpretation of what it means that someone is trying to scam you, you'll probably come out of it all right. These worrisome thoughts, the heckling, need to be interpreted in a similar way. The repetitive what if thoughts do not really accurately predict illness, job loss, boiler failure, kids flunking out of school, and so on. What they do mean is I am nervous. And that's what you have to respond to, nervousness, not disaster. Humoring the worry. So how about doing some humoring? There are a lot of ways to do this. Here is one method. Simply take thought, accept it, and exaggerate it. There is a training exercise in professional theater called yes and. In this exercise, you accept whatever the other person in the scenes has just told you and build on it, and by adding something else, you don't disagree or contradict or deny what the other player just said. You say with an add to it. This is probably the most fundamental rule of improvisational comedy, not denial. Instead, accept whatever the other performer offer you and build on it. This rule works on stage and will also work in your mind. In your internal world, the reason it works so well on stage is different from the reason it works so well with worry. But this rule definitely helps with worry. It helps because it's an expression of the rule of opposites. How can you use it? Here are some examples of humoring the thoughts in this way. What if I freak out on the airplane and they have to restrain me? Yes, and when the plane lands, they will probably parrot me through tone before taking me to the asylum, and I will be on the nightly news for everyone to see. What if I get so nervous at the banquet that my hands shake so everyone can see? Yes, and I will probably spill hot soup all over the bridal party and cause second-degree burns, so the honeymoon will be ruined. What if I get a fatal illness? Yes, and I better call the hospital to make a reservation now, and probably the funeral home too. The point of this response is to not get rid of the worry. My clients are often so used to trying to rid themselves of their chronic worry that they will sometimes try the humoring response for a while. then come back to me and say, it didn't work, I still worried. That's not the aim of the humoring. Worry is counterintuitive. When you try to remove it by whatever means, it becomes more persistent. The point of humoring response is to become more accepting to the thought for what it is, simply a thought, a twitch in your internal world. It's okay to have thoughts, smart ones, dumb ones, pleasant ones, angry ones, scary ones, and so on. We don't have that much choice in the matter. We all have a lot of thoughts, and a lot of them are misleading and exaggerated. That's okay. We don't have to be guided by them, or argue with them, or disprove them, or silence them. We just have to be willing to hear them as we go on about our business. I noticed that my client with a chronic worry go through a cycle. When they have a time of extra worry, they label it a bad time and struggle to bring it to the end. When they have a time of reduced worry, they label it a good time and try to keep the worry at bay. They are always trying to adjust the menu of thought, and it usually brings a very different result that they intended. What's a person to do? When you try to get rid of the bad times, it often prolongs and strengthens them. When you try to hold on the good times, they get ripped from your hands. For stating right, let's recall the important observation. The harder I try, the worse it gets. How can you apply that here? You might identify your worried thought and keep the thought in mind. What does that mean? To keep that thought in mind, it means the opposite of what you do when you try to keep the thought out of mind. You deliberately keep the thought at hand, playing with it, repeat it, trying not to forget about it, and maybe checking it with yourself every 3 minutes or so to make sure you remember to repeat the thought to yourself periodically. Why would anyone do that? Well, if it's true that the harder I try, the worse it gets, you will probably get better results doing the opposite of what you usually do. Become less attached to your thoughts. Another good way, a more general one, and perhaps the most important of all, is to get less attached to your thoughts, regardless of whether the content of those thoughts seems good or bad. Your automatic thoughts are like an unending soundtrack and the accompanies you your entire life. Sometimes the thoughts are relevant, sometimes not, sometimes pleasant, sometimes not, sometimes accurate, sometimes not. There is no off switch, no volume control. We live in our thought the same way a goldfish live in the water. Neither you or nor I get to pick our thoughts, we can't. However, I won't pick how we respond to them, and we can certainly pick what we do with our time on this planet. We don't need to get our thoughts arranged the way we might like in order to do things we want to do. This work the people to do trying to hold onto the good thoughts and get rid of the bad thoughts. Where do they do it? In their heads. As the activity of life goes on around them, they are missing out, because they are inside, trying once again to rearrange the furniture rather than coming out here into the sunlight where life actually occurs. Let your thoughts go in your head while you tend to the activities that are important to you out in the external world, and the environment of people and objects that you live in. Wants to try an experiment? It won't take long, maybe 5 minutes. It's got three steps. The worry experiment. Step 1. Create a sentence maximum of 25 words and express the strongest version you can recreate of one of your typical worries. Something that's been bothering you recently. The first word, of course, will be what if. So you really only have 23 words to play with to try to create a thought that not only includes terribly when you fear, but also incorporate the long-term consequences of this problem. The angst you will feel in your old age as you remember this bad event and so on. This will be the longest of the 3 steps. Spend some time on it to get a good worry expression and to get the most unpleasant ideas in it that you can. Here are a couple of examples. As you might expect, simply reading this example of worry will induce discomfort in many readers. The same way a scary book or movie will fill a person with fear. That's okay, it will pass. However, if you don't feel up to the experience right now, bookmark this section and come back some other time when you are more willing to feel that discomfort. Example: for someone who worries about losing his or her sanity. Weak. What if I go crazy? Better. What if I go crazy and end up in an institution? Good. What if I go crazy, end up in an institution, and live a long, miserable, pointless life, forgotten, toothless, with bad hair, abandoned, and alone? For someone who worries about looking foolish at a party. Weak. What if I get really nervous at the party? Better. What if I get really nervous at the party and then start sweating and trembling? Good. What if I get really nervous at the party, start sweating and trembling, pee in my pants, and people avoid me to the rest of my life? Go ahead and try your worry. Use a topic that you usually find quite upsetting in order to make this experiment meaningful. State the what a worry and add two or three in a statement of the terrible consequences it will produce. Don't just stop with your first draft. Take a little time to edit it and get the maximum strain. All the fear and loathing you can master into your wording. Step 2. Write the number of 1 to 25 on a slip of paper. Step 3. Sit or stand in front of a mirror so you can see yourself. Say the worry sentence out loud slowly 25 times. After each repetition, cross off the next number on your slip of paper so you can keep count. If you prefer, you can group 25 small items, toothpick, coins, jelly bean, or tic-tac on the table, moving them one at a time with each repetition. Do not count in your head. Because that takes so much concentration, I want you to concentrate on the 25 repetition of the worrisome thought. Go ahead and try this. Pick a time and place that allow you privacy so you can focus your attention on what you are saying without a lot of concern for being overheard. You may feel foolish anyway, but please don't give it a fair try. Do not skip past this. This exercise may not be a pleasant experience, but I think it will be worth the temporary pain. Experiments like this will be very helpful in developing a better understanding of how your worry works and in cultivating a different way of responding to it. Come back when you are done. It seems odd and counterintuitive, this idea. But remember what kind of the result you have obtained from logical and intuitive effort in the past. Just check it out. It's an experiment, all done. So now, if you were doing this experiment in my office, the question I would ask is this: how did the emotional impact of the last repetition compare to the emotional impact of the first repetition? Which one bothered you more? Repeating the worry usually reduces its power. If you are like the most people with a chronic worry, you probably found that the worrisome thought lost power with repetition, so that the last repetition felt much less disturbing than the first one. And if you did, this offers a powerful insight into the nature of your chronic worry. Think of all the effort you have made to rid yourself of the worry and how little you have to show for them. Think of the results you have obtained from the anti-worry technique you listed in Chapter 3. Yet here, with just a few moments of repeating your worry out loud, you probably reduce its ability to disturb you, not permanently of course, but the repetition produced a temporary change in your emotional response to the worry. What if this is more like the way to respond to chronic worry? What if this approach to worrying and making plenty of room for the worry has more to offer you than all the thought-stopping method you have heard so much about? This would mean a major revision of your relationship with the chronic worry. It would suggest a counterintuitive response to a counterintuitive problem, consistent with the rule of opposites. You would respond the chronic worry by accepting and playing with the thoughts rather than trying to rid yourself of them. You would diffuse the worry thoughts by accepting them as a source of doubt rather than danger. You would humor the worries rather than get drawn into unwanted argument. You would treat them like a tick rather than a tumor. In short, you can replace the counterproductive thought, stopping with the very productive thought exposure. A snake puppy who wants to overcome that phobia will need to spend some time with the snakes in order to overcome the fear. If you have an ongoing issue with the chronic worry, the worrisome thoughts are your snakes. I have worked with a client who feared snakes and wanted to overcome that fear, and I have done that by having one more extended exposure session with a client and a snake. While the problem initially seems unsurmountable, To the client, it's not really a hard job to help them overcome it. I just have to take the time to help them accept the symptom of fear and get involved with the snake. These desensitizations to the snake then occur quite naturally. The only thing I have to remember is to get a non-poisonous snake, and with chronic worry, all the snakes are non-poisonous. Toads, however upsetting, full, disgusting, annoying, and so on, are just never danger. It's discomfort, not danger. For some people, it will be enough to take the humor response as I have described it there. If you can do that and return your energy and attention back to the activity that are important to you, that might be all that you need to do. Other people might find the habit of chronic worry more persistent and entrenched in their life and will benefit from using more specific and tailored technique. You will find those in the next chapter. Thinking it over. In this chapter, we have looked at the basic tool you can use to save your relationship with the chronic worry in a helpful direction. You tried an experiment of repeating worrisome thoughts to evaluate what happens if you make room for the thought rather than resist them. And we'll look at ways you can humor these thoughts the same way you might humor uncle argument in chapter 9. We will look at the more active ways you can respond to particularly persistent and unpleasant thoughts. Chapter 9. Aha! 3 steps for handling chronic worry. Here is your proverbial aha moment in dealing with worry. This is an acronym you can use to help you remember a couple of steps to take when you are being bothered by worrisome thoughts. A. Knowledge and accept. H. Humor the worrisome thoughts as you would humor uncle argument. A. Activity. Resume doing things that are important to you in your external world. Here is the detailed explanation for each step of AHA. A knowledge and a sap. What is the knowledge here? That you are having a worrisome thought. Once again, it might be annoying to find it back in your head. You might want to refuse to acknowledge its appearance because it seems so unreasonable that, once again, this thing is occurring to you. It offers nothing of value, and you have dismissed it so many times before, yet here is again, serving a useful purpose, bothering you like a spam email that show up in your mailbox every hour, or maybe even though you have had a lot of experience with these worrisome thoughts and have never been harmed by them. You still respond with a fear because you wonder, what if this is the time that something happened, and you get tricked by that thought into taking the content seriously. You wish you could be perfectly sure that the thought is false for all the time, but of course you can't have that certainty. So okay, you can simply acknowledge that you are having another occurrence of worrisome thought. Maybe you recognize by the what if introduction, and maybe you don't catch on until you consider the content of the content it was offering you. But okay, you have a brain, you have so you have a thoughts. No need to try to ignore it or pretend it's not there. There is nothing wrong with ignoring it, really. But if the effort you make to ignore the thought keeps bringing it back to your attention, then try to ignore the thought is not helping. Here you are, having another one of the many thoughts you will have today, and this one happens to be a closer. Whom do you acknowledge it to? Usually just yourself. This is an internal process in which you briefly notice the presence of the worrisome thoughts, acknowledge them without resistance or suppressions, and move on to the next thing. Sometimes you might have reasons to mention the worrisome thought to others, and we will take a look at that in chapter 12. What's to accept? The fact that you are having a thought you don't like. You may or may not agree with the content of the thought. You might find it reasonable or you might not find it repulsive. It doesn't really matter. You don't get to pick and choose which thought you will have and which thought you won't have. Nobody does. There is no need to try to contradict the thought, to disprove it, to make it go away, or to reassure yourself. There probably won't be any benefit if you do. No one expects you to control your thoughts. You are accountable for your actions, and you will be judged by your actions, not by your thoughts. You can have a worrisome thought, same as you can have an angry thought, a jealous thought, a sexist thought, a wicked thought, a kind thought, a unkind thought, a sensual thought, a compassionate thought, a murderous thought, or whatever. To say that worries are a dime a dozen would be to greatly exaggerate their value. So okay, you can allow yourself to have whatever thoughts happen to come to mind, same as you will allow yourself to have whatever noises your stomach might make, same as you will allow yourself to have whatever reaction you might have to an unpleasant outdoor. If someone else hears your stomach grumble and you feel impressed, you can go ahead and say, "Excuse me." If you wish, no one can hear your thoughts, so there is no occasion for apology. You don't control your thoughts, so there is no need for judgment. Here you are, having a thought that you wouldn't choose to have if you could make the choice, which you can't. Recently, a client who tends to be a little perfectionistic and demanding of herself asked me, "But what can I say to myself when I notice I am having one of these thoughts again?" I suggested. "Oh, well," she had thought something more complicated, more powerful, and cleansing wouldn't be necessary. "Nope, this is not as the saying goes. Rocket science, you don't control your thought, nor do your thoughts control you. When it comes to automatic thought like this, you are more like a reader of a book than you are like the author, so no need to engage in a prideful struggle to control your thoughts. You don't need to pick the thought you have or exclude the thought you think you should be included. Oh well, when I get to the underworld, there will be some change made. The first step, acknowledge and accept, is probably the most important and powerful of the three. I describe it as simple as possible, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Some people may be able to simply acknowledge and accept the unwanted thought and move on to the activity step without the use of any other technique of response. That's great. If that works for you, just move on without spending any time on this step. That tends to be the exception though. Most people find that the thoughts are a little stickier than that they cannot move on so quickly because they find that they are still arguing with Uncle argument, still wishing that it would cease and desist. Cultivating an accepting attitude toward thoughts you detest and fear is usually a long, gradual process. A task we work on all over life rather than a specific goal we attain quickly and completely. It's something that you practice and acquire over time, not something that you simply do. It reminds me of the slogan on the box of the Othello board game. Othello is a deceptively simple game with pieces like a checkers. With the black side and the white side, you win by outflanking your opponent's piece and flipping them over to your color. Sounds simple, but the game is actually quite complex. And the slogan is, "A minute to learn, a lifetime to master." If you become dehydrated, perhaps because you play too much tennis on a hot, sunny day without adequate liquid, you could drink more water and solve the problem. If you were super dehydrated, you might require intravenous fluids. That's all it would take. Resupply your fluids and the problem is fixed. Training yourself to handle your worrisome thoughts differently is not like the problem of resupplying your water. It's more like the process of exercising to get yourself back into shape or of dieting and all losing weight. You will need to learn, practice, and continually learn and continually follow some steps in order to improve and get the results you seek. What's most important about dieting is acquiring and following the habit of eating a healthy menu of each day and getting regular exercise. That's more important than whatever you happen to eat today. Because if you continue with your good habit, your weight and physical condition will generally fall into line. In the same way, what's most important here is acquiring a regular habit of how you respond to worrisome thoughts, not how many worrisome thoughts you have today. What's really important is moving in the right direction. It's much less important how fast you go or how gracefully. In order to figure out some good news, some good ways to respond to worry, first clarify the kind of situation you confront now. You can you can do this by using the two-part test from chapter 2, which asks, is there a problem that exists now in the external world around you? If there is, can you do something to change it now? If you get anything other than two yes answer to no answer, one no and one yes maybes or whatever, then you don't have a problem in your external world that you can solve right now. You have the problem of worrying. You are being baited by uncle argument. The experiment of getting baited by and bothered by worrisome thought is similar to what you see if you hold up a small mirror to an aquarium containing a sea of fighting fish. The fish are kept alone because the males fight to the death if they are housed together. When I was a kid, we would hold up a mirror and watch the fearsome display this fish would put on when he showed himself. Thinking the image was another fish, our fish would prepare for combat, turning a bright red with the gills out, fins waving, mouth opening wide, and so on. Of course, there was not any of other fish to fight. And after a while, the fish would calm down, but for a few minutes, he would get really riled up, the same way you might get bothered by a worrisome thought. These reactions is real. The threat is not. It's a fake fish. What you have is the emotion of feeling nervous. It's okay to feel nervous. You probably really dislike the emotion, but it's like the experience of sitting in an uncomfortably warm room. Not like a camping in the forest fire, it's discomfort, not danger. You might be sitting in an uncomfortably warm room and reading about the forest fire and watching a movie about the forest fire, but it's still just discomfort, no matter how realistic the film is or how vivid the description. The problem you face is not the problem described in the catastrophe clause of your worry. The problem you face is the discomfort you experience in response to the worrisome thought and your mental natural inclination to take that thought seriously and resist it. When you resist the thought with your usual selection of anti-worry responses, this is when you once again experience the difficulty of the harder I try, the worse it gets. That's the first step. Knowledge and a step. If you find that you frequently take the bait and get caught up in arguing with uncle argument, then this second step will probably be helpful. Humor the worrisome thoughts. Having knowledge the temporary presence of the thought and accept that this presence as best you can. You might not find it helpful to respond to the worrisome thought in a playful, counterintuitive style, so do something very different. Employ the rule of opposites. Here are some ways you can respond in a playful or silly manner to the problem of getting hooked by uncle argument effort to get you embroiled. Sing a worry song. You can make a song of your worry. I have some example of this on my website. Songs about panic attacks sung in my own dreadful voice. Pick a catchy tune that's easy to sing to, and create your own worrisome lyric about the disasters that are waiting for you around every corner. Here are, for instance, is the first of one of my songs about panic attack. It's sung to the tune of Campton's Races. I will go crazy, then I will die. Do da, panic gonna get me by and by. Oh, do da, they make my head feel light, make my heart race all day. Run stark naked through shopping malls. Do da, do da, do da, do da. Write a haiku. If you don't feel like singing, you can write a haiku. Haiku is a traditional Japanese poetry form. There is a lot of learned about haiku, but for our purpose, we will just focus on one simplistic aspect of it. It's a three-line poem without rhymes. The first line is 5 syllables. The second is 7. The third is 5. You simply write a three-line unrhymed poem and of your worries that fits this format. Let's suppose you have a bothersome thought and you recognize it for what it is, but still cannot simply dismiss it. You have tried to reason your way out of it, and you have tried to distract yourself. Your usual ways of interrupting the thought do not seem to be working for you. You are still trying to fight the fake fears. This would be a good time to haiku. Here are some haikus I have received. I feel dizzy now. I will probably go insane. Please water my plants. I'm on the plane now. They will see my shakes and cry. Please pass the barf bags. If haiku is a little too exotic for you, how about a limerick? Why write a limerick? A limerick is a 5-line poem that you probably first encountered when you were a child. The first, second, and fifth lines rhyme with each other and have the same number of syllables, usually 8 or 9. The third or fourth line rhyme with each other and have the same number of syllables, usually 5 or 6. The structure sounds complicated, but it is easier than it sounds, and get a limerick its characteristic rhythm. Limerick often start with the line, there once was a, or there was Here is a simple limerick. A woman who near in the day thought, what if I turn out a real Betty? It will ruin my brain. They will declare me insane, and my friends will all be socketing. Worry in your second language. Are you bilingual? Even you just have high school training in the second language, that may be enough to enable you to do the worry you're worrying in your second language. Or if you don't know a second language at all, you can use the Big Latin. Big Latin is just a simple way to transform English word into something that sounds quite different. Parents use it to talk in front of their children about topic they want to keep secret. Worry in a fake foreign accent. Yes, it's silly, but why not? Silly can help you keep a good perspective on the worry. No need to give the worry content more respect than it deserves. List your worries. Make a list of your worry chronic worries. Start with the basic list of the one that frequently occur to you, and add to it over time as you notice new one. Once you have the basic list, you can get into the habit each time you notice a worry of quickly checking to see it's on your list. If it's not, add it. Once you see it in your list, go about your business securing the knowledge that you have recorded this worry and can return to it at any time. You don't have to keep thinking about it right now because it's recorded on your list. This list will be useful when you work with the exercise I will discuss in chapter 10. Record your worries. You make audio recording of your worries on your smartphone or either other digital device. The idea here is to mimic the process that occurs in your head as you worry. This usually involves a lot of repetition of a couple of simple what-if thoughts. There are several ways to do this. One is to make a short recording, perhaps 30 to 60 seconds, of a single what-if worry. Say it several times, as many as will fit into the short recording. You can then set aside times during the day, 10-minute period, when you can set this device to continually play and replay the recorded worry. The effect is similar to what you would get if you could eavesdrop on someone's thoughts while they were engaged in worry. People are often concerned that if they do this, the worry will somehow become more compelling, and they will be unable to stop. However, think back to the experiment with the 25th repetition in chapter 8. Hopefully you did that experiment and be guided by the result you got with it. When people do that experiment, they almost always find the worry loses its emotional punch and hold on their attention as they do more repetition. Another way to use recording is to record a longer worry session, one that more like an argument with the uncle argument, in which you go back and forth with the worry, trying to disprove it and to silence it, to calm it, and so on. Play both parts of the argument, uncle argument, as he tries to get your quote, as you try to calm and reassure yourself. You might want to make a recording of 30 minutes with the approach and set aside time to listen to it regularly. Do you worry about playing with worries? The situations are probably very different from what you have been trying. They involve accepting and playing with your worrisome thoughts rather than resisting and taking them seriously. What reaction do you have to the idea of humoring your chronic worry? People are often nervous at the first about humoring their worrisome thoughts. It seems risky to them, like they are tempting fate. They may have certain beliefs about worry that suggest the worry needs to be treated very seriously and carefully, as if chronic worry were itself dangerous. I will take a look at some of this belief in chapter 11. When you are done with this second step, don't keep repeatedly humoring the worry again and again, waiting for it to go away. That's too much like arguing with encouragement. Instead, take a humoring stance with the thought and then move on to the third step, allowing them to follow you as you get back into the external world, if that's what they do. Activity, resuming doing things that are important to you, and take the worries with you if necessary. If you have ever had an exam, you are probably familiar with the part where the doctor switches through a pair of lenses, asking you, better here or better here? While you try to decide which lens gives you better vision. You face a similar choice when you are caught up in worry. The choice is this: better here, your internal world of worry, or better here in your external world. It's generally much more helpful to get involved in the external world. It's better to engage in activities that are usually important or fun for you while you are worried and uncomfortable. than it is to spend much time in your head trying to get rid of the thoughts. The reason external involvement is a better choice is not because you will feel better right away. You might not, but it will lead to a better outcome and a better pattern for the future. When I take a group of fearful flyers on a flight, there are often one or two people who have a terribly hard time boarding the plane. They stand in the gate, trying so hard to get more comfortable with the idea of boarding, but they can't find the comfort they want, and so they feel stuck. If they make their choice on the basis of wanting to feel better, they walk away and go home. They do feel better immediately, but it does not last. By the time they get to parking lot, they start feeling regret and they have a pretty miserable rest of the day. On the other hand, if they decide on the basis of how they want to feel, not right then but that night, then they get on the plane, feeling afraid in the moment because they know they will real they will feel real good when they return home with that accomplishment behind them. You face a similar choice with worry. It's tempting to figure that you should do a little more thinking about the thoughts, to try again to review them or reasons with them in an effort to feel better right now, but that's a shell game. You won't win that game because it's rigged against you. It's a forced soccer. The rule of opposite suggests, well, the opposite, let's go do something else, while giving the worry time to decline. This is not the same as trying to make yourself so busy that you stop worrying. That's just another version of stop thinking that, and just as unhelpful in the long run. Take your worries for a walk. If you have a dog, you generally need to take those dogs for a walk, unless you have a room to let them run. There will be times when you don't feel like it, when it's cold and snowy outside, when you are busy writing a book, or when you have a headache and you just don't feel like doing it. But if you don't let the dog poop and pee outdoors, pretty soon you will do it indoors. That won't do much for your headache or your book. And then when you take those dogs for a walk, they don't always do what you want. Sometimes they raise a hat trying to pull you along. Sometimes they lag behind and you have to make them follow. Sometimes they try to eat stuff they shouldn't or bark at your neighbors. Those dogs are a lot of like your worrisome thoughts. Sometimes they demand attention when you really don't like giving it. And sometimes they just don't do things that way you wish they would, but life is better with the walk than without them. You have probably noticed that you tend to worry less when you are busy and more when you are in idle. Episodes of chronic worry often fade faster when you are active, so it will be useful to return your attention and energy back to involvement with the external world around you. By this, I don't mean to simply make yourself busy. That's too much like trying to get rid of the thoughts. Not that there isn't anything terribly wrong with that. Getting rid of the thoughts, if it can be done simply and effectively, it's just that trying directly to get rid of the thought usually makes them more persistent and plentiful. So it is with worries. It might seem like there will be a better time to go to a dinner party, but life is a come as you are party. And if you are worried the night of the party, then pick up your worries and bring them with you. Would you be happier without the worries? Yes, but that choice is not immediately available. Would you be better off laying in bed alone with your worries? Probably not. Go on about your business. The worries may leave sooner that way. If they don't, at least you are participating in life while you wait for them to pass. People often object to the idea of getting involved with a project of any kind on the grounds that they will be able to do a better job when they are not worried so much. Similarly, they often want to isolate themselves from others out of a concern that others will notice their distress and be bothered by it. Both are instances of how our good instinct of how to handle worry tend to be the opposite of what would actually be helpful, but suggest that we need first to get rid of the worrisome thought we are experiencing and then afterward to get involved with activity outside of our skin. It's more often that the other way around. Your involvement with your external world will tend to direct your energy and attention there and leave less of it in your head. Moreover, when you interact with the external world, you get more involved with the realistic rule of thumb. When you are in your head, by contrast, you can imagine anything. This is why anticipatory worry is almost always worse than anything that actually happened in real life. There are no rules in your head. Anything seems possible. In the external world, the rules of reality apply. thinking it over. In this chapter, we look at an acronym you can use to guide your response to chronic worry whenever it crops up. The acronym is AHA. Acknowledge and accept, humor the worrisome thought, and as you would humor uncle argument, activity like resume me doing things that are important to you in your external world. You have noticed the worrisome thoughts and acknowledge them. You have a sidesteps the instinct to oppose them and instead cultivated an accepting attitude toward the temporary condition of being worried. You have responded to the thoughts in some playful ways, perhaps using a song or a poem to play with its content rather than taking it seriously. You have gotten back into the external world and some activity that's meaningful to you, and you allowed the worries to accompany you if that's what they do. Treating your worries in this manner, how does it compare to what you usually do? If it's the opposite of what you usually do, then good, you are on track with the rule of opposite. Chapter 10, Your Daily Worry Workout. This chapter introduces 3 daily maintenance tasks you can use to reduce your daily tasks worry and render the worry less disruptive over time. The first one involves regular exposure to worrisome thoughts. The second is a breathing exercise, and the third is a mindfulness meditation. Use this as you would use a daily vitamin. They are not antibiotic or some other medication you take to relieve a specific ailment or symptom. They are something you do on a regular basis not to achieve or some immediate specific goal, but for their overall contribution to your health and wellness. They are usually surprised by that because it's so you guess it counterintuitive. They thought they would get more relief from effort to stop worrying than they would from deliberate worry, but it's turned out that the opposite is usually true. You will probably find yourself encountering this realization time and again as you work with the pattern of chronic worry. The rule of opposites is one of the best guides you have. Chapter 9 offers a variety of quick ways to respond on the fly when you find yourself engaged in unwanted chronic worry. They all incorporated the rule of opposites. The sum of them might have seemed silly. This is not because I'm silly or because I think you are silly. It's because so much of the content of chronic worry is silly. When you take that content at face value, you get fooled into fighting worry in ways that make it worse rather than better. Those responses are all good ways around this problem. I hope you have sampled them and pick a couple that you can use when the need arises. Responding to intermittent worry. Let's suppose you are a manager of a medium-sized department at your workplace. You have your own work to do and you have to supervise the work of the group employee as well. You have tried several different ways to find the right balance between communicating with your staff and getting your own work done. You tried leaving your door open all the time so that staff could drop in to see you whenever they want. This encouraged them to stay in touch with you and to advise you of a situation that needed your attention, but it also encouraged a steady stream of staffers dropping by to chat, complain, and score brownie point with you, preventing you from getting your own work done. Then you tried keeping your door closed to discourage all but the most determined of staffers. However, this led staffers to increasingly hang around outside your office, sitting around idly and making noise while hoping to have a chance to catch your eye. The bolder one would even knock on your door or slip notes underneath it. Everyone's productivity, yours and theirs, suffer as a result. In that case, you might try a third method, setting a schedule for when staffers can drop in and see you, and also for when they should leave you alone unless they smell smoke. You might keep your door closed for too much of the day so you could do your work, have it open at scheduled times each day so your staff could see you when they need to. That's the method what I would suggest to you for establishing a better relationship with chronic worry. Schedule regular appointment for it. You would probably prefer being completely free of worry, but you also probably know by now that avoiding and opposing just gives it more energy. Worry appointments are more likely to help you. They are designed to those persistent unwelcome worries which are not of any use to you. Chronic what-if worries which do not point out problems you need to solve but simply nag and bother you. They build on a feature of worry that you probably noticed when you did the experiment. In Chapter 8, turning yourself over the worrisome thoughts without resistance usually relieves them of their power. Set up appointments for worrying. This is time you set aside exclusively for worry. This idea may seem strange to you because it runs counter to our usual instinct, but that's often how it seems when you fight fire with fire. Fight fire with fire is not just a metaphor, it's a technique used to control forest fire. It involves deliberately burning all the flammable material that would otherwise fuel the fire in its spread. When the forest fire arrives at the burned out part, it falters because it has no fuel left to keep it burning. Resistance is the fuel by which chronic worry spreads. During a worry appointment, which will last about 10 minutes, you will engage in a pure worry. Devote your full attention to worrying and nothing else. Do not engage in other activity like driving, showering, eating, cleaning, texting, listening to music, riding on a train, and so on. Spend a full 10 minutes worrying about whatever items you usually worry about. Make a list of your worries and ahead of times so you have an agenda or use the list you develop in chapter 9. And don't try to solve the problem. Reassure yourself, minimize problem, relax, clear your mind, reason with yourself, and take any other steps to stop worrying. Simply worry, which means reciting repeatedly lots of what if questions about unpleasant possibility. This will probably seem strange and awkward at first. However, if you are reading this book, you will likely have a lot of experience with worrying. Here are some changes to use that experience for your benefit. Schedule these times in advance, 2 a day, and write them into your schedule. Pick times when you have privacy and do not have to answer the phone or the doorbell. Talk to others, look after the dog or the kids, and so on. It's usually best to avoid the following times: first thing in the morning on waking, last thing at night, or right after meals. Watching yourself worry. One more detail: worry out loud in front of a mirror. This is perhaps the most peculiar part, I know, but don't skip it, it's important. The advantage of doing the worrying this way is that it helps you be better observer of your worry. Most worry is subliminal. It occurs when we are multitasking. We worry while driving, attending a lecture, showering, eating, watching television, or doing some routine work that doesn't demand much attention. And since we rarely give a worry our full attention, it's easy for it to continue endlessly because worry comes in a form of our own subliminal thought. It has more power to influence us, and we all tend to assume that if it's my thought, there must be something to it. We tend not to notice that we can think all the kinds of nonsense that thoughts are often only anxiety symptom, nothing more. When you worry out loud, you don't just say the worries, you hear them. When you worry in front of a mirror, you see yourself doing the worry. You're not just worrying in the back of your mind, you are hearing and watching yourself as a worry. The worry is no longer subliminal, and this will probably help you get a better perspective on it. Worry appointments are deliberately structured this way to convert worry from a multitasking activity to a unitary one, in which you only do one thing, worry, and you do it with the fullest awareness and attention possible. Why would anyone do this? Watching yourself worry sounds on the surface like a busy or unwelcome exercise. You would need a pretty good reason to do worry appointment. And there is one. There's usually a benefit that comes during the rest of the day. When you are not engaged in a worry appointment, if you find yourself worrying when you are off worry that day, you can give yourself the following choice. You can either A. Take 10 minutes now to worry very deliberately about this issue. B. Postpone it to your next worry appointment. The payoff. The immediate benefit is the ability to postpone worry. Many of my clients find that this enables them to sweep large portions of their day relatively clear of worry. However, it only works if you can actually do the worry period as prescribed. If you try to postpone worries knowing that you probably won't actually show up for the worry appointment, the postponing probably won't work for you, so don't try to fool yourself. The postponing alone, the reduction in worry during the rest of your day, will probably be sufficient reason by itself to justify doing worry appointment. But there is more. The regular use of worry appointment will also be a big help in changing your authentic responses to chronic worry and help you take the content of the worrisome thoughts less seriously. Taking action about the worry is usually much more helpful than thinking about it, reasoning with it, or trying to change the thoughts in your head. Worry appointments are a good example of this. How about trying it out? Take 10 minutes and do the exercise as I described it above, and then come back to finish this chapter. Common reactions to worry appointment. I have worked with a lot of clients who came to see me for help with the chronic worry, and I have asked most of them to use worry appointment. I have heard a lot of common reaction from people who tried them, and it's usually not the reaction you might expect. When I first started offering this technique, I have expected to get angry feedback and that I was an idiot, that they were not ever coming back, but that's not all what's happened. Perhaps the most common reaction clients have is that they tell me, "Boy, it's really hard to fill the 10 minutes." This confused me at first because these were people who worried a lot. Breathing and worry. Breathing is very often affected by worry and anxiety. We see this most dramatically when a person has a panic attack and feels like he is suffocating for lack of air. He is not. No one suffocates from panic, but he is experiencing uncomfortable breathing, which tricks him into thinking some catastrophe is about to occur. People with chronic worry often experience a less dramatic but very bothersome discomfort with their breathing as well. This can include such symptoms as well as feeling lightheaded and dizzy, numbness, tingling in the extremities, difficulty getting a full breath, tension and heaviness, thoughts of passing out, and increased heart rate. These symptoms are not at all dangerous but can grab your attention in a way that make it more difficult to respond to the worry. For this reason, I often find it helpful for people to learn a good breathing exercise. The point of the breathing exercise is not to control your breathing, but to make it sufficiently comfortable that you can return your focus to what's more important, responding to the chronic worry. You may have already tried the breathing and not had much success. The reason for that is that most descriptions of deep breathing are incomplete. You have probably been told, and you have probably also read it as well, that what you need to do is take a deep breath. If you are like most people, that advice has not helped you much. It's a good advice, but it's incomplete. It doesn't tell you how to take a deep breath. A good breathing exercise should tell you how to take a deep breath, and that's what I'm going to do. Here is the key. When you feel like you can't catch your breath, it's because you forgot to do something. You forgot to exhale. That's right. Before you take a deep breath, you have to give one way. Why? Because when you have been breathing in a short, shallow manner, if you try to quickly switch to a deep inhale, it's very hard to do. You are very likely to simply take a more laborious, shallow breath from your chest that will give you all the air you need, but it won't feel good. Go ahead. Try that now and see what I mean. Put one hand on your chest, the other on your belly. Use your hands to notice what muscles you are using to breathe. Breathe very slowly from your chest a few times, then try to take a deep breath. I think you will find that when you inhale, you continue to use your chest muscles rather than your diaphragm or belly. Deep breathing, by contrast, comes from your belly. When you breathe in this shallow manner, you get all the air you need to live. But you can also get other physical symptoms which add to your discomfort. You might get chest pain or heaviness because you have tightened the muscles of your chest to an uncomfortable degree. You might feel lightheaded or dizzy because shallow breathing can produce the same sensation as hyperventilation. You may also get a more rapid heartbeat and maybe numbness or tingling in the extremities as well, all from breathing short and shallow. Breathing is actually a sideshow in dealing with the chronic worry. The most important response to chronic worry is to use the technique in this book to develop a different relationship with worry. However, belly breathing can help in managing the physical symptom of anxiety while you learn how to relate differently to worry. Use it for periodic comfort when you feel need. Belly breathing exercise. Place one hand on your belly line and other on your chest, right over the breastbone. You cannot use your hands as simple as biofeedback device. Your hand will tell you what part of your body and what muscles you are using to breathe. About your mouth and gently sigh, as if someone had just told you something really annoying. You should do. Let your shoulder and the muscles of your upper body relax down with exhale. The point of the sigh is not to completely empty your lung. It's just to relax the muscle of your upper body. Close your mouth and pause for a few seconds. Keep your mouth closed and inhale slowly through your nose by pushing your stomach out. The movement of your stomach precedes the inhalation by just the tiniest fraction of a second. Because it's a motion which is pulling the air in, when you have inhaled as much as you can comfortably, just stop you or finish what is inhaled. Pause. How long? You decide. I'm not going to give you a specific count because everybody counts at a different rate and everybody has a different size lung. Pause briefly for whatever time feels comfortable. However, be aware that when you breathe this way, you are taking larger breath than you are used to. For this reason, it's necessary to breathe more slowly than you used to. If you breathe at the same rate you used with your small, shallow breath, you will probably feel a little light-headed from over-breathing, and it might make you yawn. Neither is harmful. They are just signals to slow down. Follow them. Open your mouth. Exhale through your mouth by pulling your belly in. Pause. Continue to repeat step 4 to 7. Give it a try now. Go ahead and practice the breathing exercise for a few minutes. Let your hands be your guide. They will tell you if you are doing this correctly or not. Where's the most muscular movement of the breathing? You want to accurate your stomach. Your upper body should be relatively still. If you feel movement in your chest or notice your head and shoulders moving upward, start again at step 1. Practice getting the motions down to your stomach. This might feel awkward and difficult the first few times because breathing in a short, shallow way is such an old habit for people who struggle with anxiety. Do not let that bother you. It just means you need persistence, patience, practice. Breathing style is a habit, and the best way to restore a habit is lots of repetition of the new habit. This is not really something new for you. You used to breathe this way all the time, certainly when you were an infant and young child. In fact, if you want to see some world-class belly breathers, visit a newborn in any maternity ward. They don't breathe with their chest at all. They're just their tummies, which expand outward when they exhale and contracts inward when they exhale. Infants don't do chest breathing. Having trouble? Tips to help learn belly breathing. If you have a trouble redirecting your breathing from chest to stomach, practice isolating your stomach muscle first. Interlace your finger across your stomach and practice pushing your stomach out and then in without breathing. As you get good at that, begin to pair it with your breathing. Use a variety of posture. When you are sitting down, you may find that leaning back in the chair or leaning forward with your forearms on your thighs makes it a little easier than sitting up perfectly straight. Lie on your back. You can put a heavy book or other object on your chest to make it easier to focus on using your stomach muscle. Lie on your front with a pillow beneath your stomach and pressing your stomach against the pillow. Practice in front of a full-length mirror to see what you are doing. If you are unable to breathe comfortably through your nose due to allergies or any other reason, use your mouth instead. You will need to inhale even more slowly this way. In order to avoid gulping your air, you will know you have mastered this technique once your breathing feels more relaxing and soothing. Build the habit. How often should you practice deep breathing? As often as possible in sessions of 1 minute or so, or 2 weeks. When it's time to practice, the first thing to do is to notice how you have been breathing, then sigh and switch the belly breathing for about 1 minute as you continue doing whatever you were doing before you started. Do not interrupt your activity. You want good breathing to be portable. You will probably do best if you have a system for reminding yourself to practice. Here are some systems you might see. Do the deep breathing every hour at the top of the hour during your waking day. Use ordinary frequent sounds or occurrence in your daily life as a signal to do the breathing. For example, you can do breathing each time a phone rings, someone walks by your office, your child drums the CP shop, Does she pick up? You receive a text or tweet. Yeah, place sticker or post-it notes throughout your home office or whatever to remind you. Wear your watch on the opposite hand and practice each time you notice it. Do this for 2 weeks and you will be well on your way to changing your breathing for the better. How much is enough? People often want to know if they have to breathe this way all the time. The answer is no. Just focus on mastering the technique through regular breath practice. Add it to your list of automatic responses to worry. Use worry appointment and mindfulness meditation on a daily basis and use the belly breathing whenever you feel the need. Over time, I think you will find that you use this kind of breathing more and more as you make it your new habit, but that can let you happen naturally just by following the suggestion above. It's not a silver bullet. Some psychology and healthcare professionals believe that professionals such as myself shouldn't teach our client belly breathing because people may come to think of the breathing technique as a silver bullet, a lifesaver, and use it the same way they might use any other anti-worry technique. They have a point. Still, I find it useful to show this technique to most of my anxious clients because they often have a bad breathing technique, one that creates more anxious physical symptoms. These physical symptoms give rise to more worries and interfere with your ability to handle the anxiety. But keep this point in mind. Belly breathing is best used to help you work with the worry without getting to focus on unrealistic fear of asphyxiations and other physical concerns. Belly breathing will not protect you from physical threats because shallow breathing does not actually cause physical calamities. Mindfulness meditation. People who are not accustomed to meditation often think it is an involved state of inner peace in which the mind is silent without all the intrusive thoughts that can interrupt our inner calm. They may occasionally try meditation and feel discouraged when they don't attain this state of inner quiet and calm. This is not really what meditation is about, at least for most of us. A monk is a monastery who devotes large amount of daily time to meditation may will obtain a significant period of inner peace and quiet. However, most of us will find that intrusive thoughts initially come to the fore when we set out to meditate and have a quiet mind. So meditation actually consists of noticing and passively observing all the thoughts that get in the way when we sit down to have inner peace. This is particularly the case with mindfulness meditation, as the process passively observing thoughts as they come go, and while you focus on something basic like your breathing, don't try to engage in any discussion with your thoughts, nor try to silence or remove them in any manner. Simply observe them. Want to try? Do you immediately find in your mind reason to postpone this or to think about it before you experiment with it? This is a common occurrence. You can notice that thought for what it is, a thought, without becoming judged with the apparent content of the thought. In other words, you can have the thought about waiting for a better time for or opportunity to meditate and simply do the experiment. No, anyway, nobody says you have to do an excellent job of it or pick the best time to do it. It's just an experiment. What's that you say? You really have a good reason to wait. You are on a train or sitting in a waiting room and waiting for a doctor. You have a headache and you could probably do a better job some of the time. You are too restless, or too tired, or too hungry. Those are excellent thoughts. You can have those thoughts and you can also do the experiment if you are willing. Go ahead and practice, yes. And the rebellion, yes, but here is the exercise. Sit quietly and comfortably somewhere you can be relatively free of the interruption to 5 to 10 minutes. Take a minute or two to slow down, sit comfortably erect, and turn your attention to your own thoughts and situation. It probably helps to close your eyes if you want. Likely focus your attention on your breathing. Let your attention flow it as you inhale and exhale. Notice the flow of air as it passes through your nose, your throat, and your lung. Notice the sensation of your belly as it expands and contracts. Let your attention focus more and more closely to this sensation as you withdraw your attention from the sights and sounds of the room you occupy. If you don't want to use your breath as a focus, The sounds of a fan or something similar will suffice. You may experience some brief moment of quiet and you can focus lightly on that experience sooner or later, probably sooner. Any inner quiet will get interrupted by automatic thoughts. Simply notice those thoughts without becoming strongly involved in judging them. Simply allow your attention to passively return to focus when you are interrupted or distracted by thoughts. For most people, meditation is not achievement of internal quiet. It's noticing the interrupting thought that come to mind when you seek internal quiet. The interrupting thought may clamor for your attention. Notice the form they take to grab your attention. The thought that may embody not just worry but also judgment, criticism, anger, regret, and more. Notice the thought that way, the way you might notice drops of rain or snow falling onto your windshield. Briefly holding your attention until they are swept away by the windshield wipers or replaced by more raindrops or snowflakes. You don't need to become deeply involved with each snowflakes to become aware that there is a plenty of snow, and you don't need to become deeply involved with each thought to notice that there is plenty of worry, judgment, criticism, and more in your thoughts as they come and go. Notice their coming and going. There you have meditated. What's that you say? You don't feel any calmer? That's okay. If you had just done your first set of abdominal crunches, your stomach wouldn't be anyhow that no either. However, with time and repetition, you will probably notice some gradual changes. You are annoyed at how the thoughts interrupted your effort to feel calm. That's okay. Remember, meditation is about passively observing the thoughts as they rise up to interrupt the quiet. As you experience reaction of annoyance or an urge to resist, you can notice those thoughts as well. You don't feel like you did anything? That's okay. This is a brief introduction to experiencing the absence of effort and the simple observation of thoughts and thoughts rather than important message or warning. It's likely to feel like doing nothing. If you are in the habit of responding strongly to your automatic thoughts, you feel asleep? Well, that's a problem. You can't meditate while you are sleeping. Maybe you need to experiment with a different chair, one that's less conducive to sleep. Or perhaps you can sit on the floor with your back against the wall. Get in the habit. How about getting some regular experience with this process once a day? Set aside 5 to 10 minutes for meditation. Just take the time to go through the steps. You might find yourself having thoughts about how well or poorly you did this exercise, and you can notice that those thoughts as you go, just like all the others. Just show up, go through the step, and give the habit a chance to develop. After you become more accustomed to the practice, increase your daily time to 10 to 20 minutes. Our days are often filled with activity that we have to make happen, and it's easy to before that there are also activity that we just allow it to happen. People who experience chronic worry are likely to think that they need to control the thought they experience and make themselves experience the thoughts they want to have rather than the ones that occur spontaneously. It usually does not work so well. The chief benefit of adding this technique to your daily activity is that it will help you become a better and a more dispassionate observer of your own thoughts. Over time, you will enhance your own ability to observe thoughts without becoming embroiled in the content of the thought. People who struggle with chronic worry are sometimes hesitant to simple meditations because they have thoughts that suggest that maybe they will just encounter more unpleasant thoughts and more struggle with those thoughts when they meditate. My experiment is that the people generally find the opposite to be true. Experiencing with a true meditation usually leads people to be more tolerant and accepting of whatever thoughts they happen to encounter. It's the rule of opposite. Chapter 11: The Worry Parasite. Chronic worry functions like a parasite, increasingly getting the house that's you. To spend time and energy on producing and maintaining worry rather than pursuing the hopes and dreams you have for your own life. This chapter will look at how it does this and suggest a way out, but first I want to tell you the story of a parasitic flatworm, the formal name for which is Leuchlorodium paradoxum. Yes, I know my family was not much interested in this story either, but I think once you have read, you will have a better appreciation of what's at stake here and how the worry game is played. How worry takes over your life. How does this happen, and how Can you tell, can you roll this process hack back and regain control of how you spend your time and energy in life? You probably get the sense of how your life agenda has been hijacked when you recall how much time and energy you spend not just worrying but also engaging in the anti-worry technique we look at in chapter 3. What did you used to do with all the time and energy that now gets tied up in the worry and anti-worry? You probably actually did more things that were important to you in your role as a parent, spouse, friend, neighbor, employee, and so on. You had interest, passion, and ambition that you wanted to follow, and you probably followed them and did this with a lot less mental struggle than you experience now. It's not that you didn't worry at all. You certainly did because everybody worries to some extent, but you were probably more likely to go ahead and engage in activities that were important to you. You gave the speech to the PTA or some other public meeting even though you were nervous about public speaking. You went on vacation to an unfamiliar place even though you had worries about getting lost or feeling out of place. You sold your home and moved elsewhere even though you had doubt if it was the right thing to do. You had an annual physical even though you were a little nervous it wouldn't find something bad. You applied for a new job even though you were nervous about interviewing and were not sure if it was the right time for a job change, and so on. The parasitic effect of worrying. When you catch up in chronic worry, it doesn't just disturb your peace of mind. Chronic worry leads to systematic change in the way you think and behave. Just as the parasitic flatworm changes the behavior of the snail, and these changes don't further your own values and aspiration, they further the maintenance of the worry, just as the changes in the cell behavior favor the parasite's interest rather than the snail's. Chronic worry redirect much of the time, attention, and energy to worry rather than life. It lets you to spend more and more time in your head, in your internal world, trying to get your thoughts arranged the way you think they should be, always struggling and fusing with worry rather than getting out into your external world and living, doing whatever it takes to be a good parent, good friend, good employee, good neighbor, and good whoever you always wanted to be. It lets you to invest your time and energy in worry and struggle with worry rather than in being the person you wanted to be and living the life you hoped for. This invasion began with certain belief. How does chronic worry hijack your agenda? The hijacking of the snail starts when it ingests the parasitic egg. Your hijacking started when you adopted and developed certain type of belief about worry. Over time, maybe all the way back in early childhood, you develop some belief about worry. These are typically beliefs that you rarely notice or reflect human belief, which have a strong influence on how you think and how you act. Much of their power comes from the fact that you are rarely noticed or reflect upon the thought, and so they exert a powerful subliminal influence, much like propaganda. These beliefs all have an ironic aspect because they all consider worry to have value. It probably sounds silly to say that because doesn't everyone recognize that worry is a useless activity? It's not that why people who struggle with chronic worry want to overcome it, because they realize it's a useless version of their time and energy, but it's not as simple as that. If you consider closely how you react to worry, I think you will find it evident that whatever you may say or think about worry being nonsensical and powerless, you actually do behave some of the time, as if worry has some important value and power all by itself. People don't often talk about this belief with others, and often don't directly think about the belief. Most people don't recommend worry to others, and you probably don't either. At the first glance, when you look at this belief below, you might be likely to diminish them as having nothing to do with you, but give each one a little consideration. It helps if I expect the worst. I have talked with so many people who subscribe to this idea. It seems to them that if they expect the worst, they will never be surprised or experience overwhelming feeling about some sudden bad event for them, where it's a kind of dress rehearsal for a bad event that might happen in the future. They rehearse and study their lines and scene and their likely reaction and feel dread now, somehow thinking this will protect them from feeling really bad somehow, as though worry were a vaccine against feeling overwhelmed in the future. People who are influenced by this belief do not like to feel optimistic. They are suspicious of optimism because they think the universe or God will even things out by giving them something bad because they are feeling optimistic. This has a superstitious aspect to it, as when people knock on wood because they just said something optimistic and they hope to prevent that statement from backfiring on them, they may also think that God or the universe is likely to give them something good when they feel pessimistic. They often think of expecting the worst as a kind of preparation for a bad event or a form of praying your dues. Questions to consider. Have you ever felt a little nervous because you voiced an optimistic prediction or had optimistic thoughts? Have you ever felt like you should do something to undo that thought, some version of knock on wood? Have you ever experienced difficult event without emotional upset, like the death of a parent or the loss of a job, because you did enough worrying about it ahead of time? Have you experienced difficult event you did not anticipate? Were you able to manage the emotional upset despite your lack of worry preparation? Have you worried significantly about the event that never occurred? What percentage of the things you worry about have actually happened? Want to do an experiment? Try holding some optimistic thought to see if the simple act of holding positive thought makes you a little nervous. My kids will be happy and healthy every day this week without any problem. I know I'm in excellent health and won't contract any disease. All my friends and relatives will be safe from harm this week. Hold these thoughts in mind for a couple of minutes and see how you feel about them. If holding these thoughts makes you a little uncomfortable, it's probably because you do tend to believe at some level that it helps if I expect the worst. My worry can influence future events. When you are under the influence of this belief, you tend to act as if this simple act of worrying can change the future, that it might prevent bad events from happening that would have otherwise happened. I'm not referring here to situations in which you thought lead to your take action, and the action in the future influence the future. Here I mean that people treat worry itself as something that can affect the future. This belief can make worry seem like a double-edged sword. On the one hand, if you worry about the right thing, maybe the worry will prevent bad things from happening. On the other, if you fail to worry about them, maybe this will cause bad things to happen. How can you ever be sure which are the right things to worry about? This idea sure makes worry seems important. Now, if this idea were really true, we wouldn't need to spend trillion on the military. We could just organize our civilians into worrying about war. We would draft warriors rather than warriors, but then we would have to worry about whether we were preventing war or causing it. Unlikely as it seems, many people subscribe to this idea, some in a superstitious way. They may actually feel nervous when they notice that they have been worrying less, as if somehow they stop paying their dues and they need to get that payment in the mail right away. Questions to consider. Have you ever noticed that you have been worrying about a topic that you have been worrying about a great deal? Did it make you feel a little nervous? Did you feel a little irresponsible, like you had not been doing your job? Did you think you should resume worrying about it? Did you resume worrying about it? If something bad happens and I had not worried about it, I will feel guilty. This belief leads to you treat worry as a duty, or maybe even a beneficial activity. If you're showing your duty, bad thing will happen and they will be your fault. It's certainly true that if there is something you are supposed to do, say water your plants and you fail to do it and they die, then that's your fault. But there is a big difference between worrying and doing. Questions to consider. Has this idea ever led you to worry? Have you ever felt guilty for not worrying about something that actually happened? Did you apologize to anyone who was harmed and bothered by the event? Did you make amends? Were you able to forgive yourself? Worry shows I care. This is surprisingly widespread belief. It shows how we often fail to recognize the important distinction between thoughts and actions. If you have children, you probably want to be a caring parent and also to be seen as a caring parent by your family and friends the best way. Probably the only way to judge how much parents care for their children is to look at their action. Do they attempt to fill the child's needs, physical and emotional? Do they make an effort to balance assisting the child and fostering independence? Do they work at the very difficult task of communicating with the child through the various developmental stage of childhood? Caring is demonstrated by doing. Yet, in our culture, we do tend to attribute some positive characteristic to worry. It's so common for people to reflexively, automatically thinking that caring is somehow demonstrated by worrying. Questions to consider. If you were told that the neighbor never worries about these kids, would you think that was a good thing or a bad thing? Would you like to be known as someone who does not worry about your kids? If your significant other said to you, "I don't think you ever worry about me," would you take it as a complaint or a compliment? Thoughts are always important. It's a very basic human frailty to assume that thoughts are always important, and especially the one's own. Thoughts are particularly wise and important. It's a kind of vanity. Our brain produces thoughts, and if we want to evaluate our thoughts, we have to go back to the organ that produced them in the first place. No wonder we often think they are more important than they are. If you are ever had a song stuck in your head, you have had the experience of noticing that something like a song lyric get very stuck in your mind despite their lack of importance. When you are anticipating some kind of potentially difficult encounter with another person, you say you are going to ask for a raise or talk to your neighbor about his noisy dog. You might repeatedly find thoughts playing in your head as you imagine how the conversation will go. How often do those thoughts turn out to be accurate, and how often does the encounter go the way you anticipated? I am responsible for my thoughts. If you could pick and choose what thoughts you have and what thoughts you don't have, there might become something to this idea. Certainly, it would be good to use the power of mind control wisely if you had such a power, and if your thoughts affected those you love. Do your thoughts affect the people around you? Do you control your thoughts? Let's see, can you now hold in mind a flag without any red, white, or blue colors in it? I think you will find, when you consider this question, that your thoughts have no influence on anyone else unless you choose to share them, and even then, the effect of sharing your thoughts with others is unpredictable. I think you will also find that while you can apply your thoughts to a problem like a crossword puzzle or a tax calculation, you also have thoughts that occur to you spontaneously, even when if you even wish you wish they wouldn't. What belief do you hold about your thoughts? Make a list of the worry belief you hold. This will give you the opportunity to decide how you want to relate to this belief. Do you want to continue to act in accordance with this belief, or do you want to play with them? What would the rule out of opposites suggest about responding to this belief? Chapter 12, Breaking the Secrecy Trap. When you have an ongoing struggle with chronic worry, you probably often feel frustrated by the way in which friends and loved ones just don't get it about this problem. All too often, they offer simple-minded solutions like "don't worry so much" or even imply that it's your fault. They may be genuinely confused about how to be helpful, sometimes saying what they think you want to hear in an effort to help you calm down, other times refusing to discuss the problem at all. This chapter suggests ways you can get to helpful support you may need to change your relationship with worry for the better. Are you keeping your worries to yourself? Who knows about the problem you have with chronic worry? What do they know about it? If you are like most people with chronic worry, you probably haven't told many people for a variety of reasons. Maybe you are embarrassed and fear that others will lose respect for you if they know about your trouble with worry. Maybe you don't want to cause others to worry about you. Maybe you are afraid that if you talk about it, you will make it worse somehow. That just acknowledging it out loud might make it a bigger problem, or that if others know about your worry, they will keep asking. If you are worried in ways that continually rekindle your worry, we will come back to those thoughts later in this chapter. First, I want to direct your attention to what the urge for secrecy reveals about worry. Most people who struggle with worry, or any kind of anxiety for that matter, tend to keep it secret. What does it tell me about the problem if I am motivated to keep it as a secret? What kinds of a problem are we motivated to keep secret? Give that the subtle thought while I tell you about someone who kept his worry a secret. Yeah, keeping secret. Does that match your experience? Do you find you are motivated to keep your worries a secret because there is something odd about their content, something that does not entirely make sense? If that fits for you, then feeling the urge to keep your worry a secret can be a reminder that there is something funny about that worry. That the worry is just another invitation to pretend something bad, as we saw when with the diaphragma worry sentence in chapter 6. When you find yourself wanting to hide your worry, it can be a valuable reminder that you are simply nervous. That's why you are worrying. You are nervous not because you are up against a real problem in an external world. You would probably prefer not to notice it at all. But it's actually helpful to notice your nervousness. Noticing that you are feeling nervous can be a good reminder to do your aha steps, acknowledge and accept, humor the worrisome thoughts. As you would humor uncle argument and activity, resume doing things that are important to you in your external world. Secrecy and shame. One of the main reasons people keep the worry as a secret is that they feel ashamed of how much worrying they do. They fear others would shame and criticize them if they become aware of the worrying. Protection from this anticipated shame and embarrassment. This is the usual main effect people hope to achieve by keeping the worrying problem a secret, preventing shame and embarrassment. Maybe you achieve that main effect, avoiding shame and embarrassment, although even that usually feels very temporary to most warriors. They are always worried that they could accidentally reveal their worrisome nature at any time, and so rarely get any long-term comfort from this secrecy. But many effects do not tell the entire story. If you ever watch any medication commercial on television, you probably also know about side effect. Maybe you have just seen a commercial or for some medication that's supposed to relieve a problem, like acid reflux or erectile dysfunction. At the bottom of the screen, in a tiny print, comes a long list of unpleasant side effects. Sometimes this sounds pretty nasty or dangerous or even worse than the problem the medicine is supposed to relieve. As a consumer, it's up to you to decide if benefit of the medication exceed the problem of whatever side effect you might experience. There are also side effects to holding a problem with worry. It would be good to consider this side effect in evaluating whether or not secrecy is helpful strategy for you. Here are some of the side effects. Imagining the worst. Keeping your worries hidden, even from people who are close to you, deprive you of any feedback you might receive if you share the information. You are left on your own to guess at what the worry might mean to them and how other people would view your difficulties, since worry always exaggerates the negative and makes the unlikely seem quite probable. Your guess of how people might respond to your worries is probably exaggerated and overblown in the same way. The chances are excellent that your guess of how people would think about you and your worries is far worse than what they would actually think and say if they knew, so you are left imagining the worst rather than something more realistic. Feeling like a fraud. I have worked with many people who were chronic worries. Many of them were quite successful in a different area of their life, with a major accomplishment to their credit. However, they could rarely feel good about their success. They were preoccupied with these thoughts. If people knew how much worrying I do, they wouldn't think very highly of me. They literally thought they were frauds, and this belief was a negative side effect of the secrecy, and they maintain. Increased worry. When you have a secret to keep, it naturally increases your worry because you are often concerned with the possibility of suddenly revealing your secret. Increased social isolation. Chronic worry naturally interferes with social interaction with others because it leads people to spend time in their heads arguing their thoughts rather than interacting with people. People often cancel social engagement when they feel the worry to attend a dinner or a party. When this is accompanied by secrecy, it prevents you from accurately explaining your worry reason to the other party, who is left guessing why you cancelled the plane luncheon, or why you sometimes seem distant because the others are likely to think that you are just not interested in them. This can damage your social network. Okay, There might be some good reason to selectively stifle your struggle with worry, at least to a couple of people who seems to have your best interest at heart. While no one likes the prospect of feeling embarrassment, the feeling of it thoroughly passes pretty quickly. The negative side effect of secrecy, on the other hand, can last a lifetime if you never break the secrecy, so you might find significant benefit in ending it. When I first talk to a worried client about self-disclosure, he usually says something like this: I don't want to tell anybody about this problem. It's none of their business. That's true. Your worries are nobody's business but your own. The only reason to discuss it with someone is if you think that it might help your business of living, reducing worry, following your inspiration, and so on. It's about your business, not theirs. So it might be worthwhile to do a little cost-benefit analysis of the effect of keeping your worry pattern a secret, the main effect and the side effect listed above as well, to help you decide if you want to experiment with a little selective self-disclosure. If you decide to experiment with a closed self-disclosure, I have some suggestions for you. Planning self-disclosure. Start with a significant other or someone fairly central in your social network. Pick someone who is clearly in your corner, someone who will be motivated to hear what you are saying, to understand and be helpful. Schedule an agreeable time. Do not just work it in at the end of a phone call or other conversation. Don't leave it a change. Tell him or her there is something you want to discuss and ask to set up a specific time, and please do this in person if at all possible. You don't need a lot of time, probably 15 to 30 minutes should be plenty unless you want more. Your friend will be curious what the topic is, but don't get into it until the time comes. Come right to the point. Do not beat around the bush or spend the first few minutes on small talk sport or catching up on general news. Get right into the topic as suggested. In the simple. Thanks for setting this time. The thing I want to talk about is an issue I have been having and it weighs on my mind. I worry a lot and I know everybody worries, but I think it's a bigger deal for me than for most people. And here is a part where you will probably find it helpful to literally educate others, train them about what is helpful and not helpful in relenting to your worry. People's concern about how their loved ones and friends will overreact or respond in unhelpful ways are one of the reasons they keep it a secret. You can expect that they will automatically know how to be helpful. You will have to explain it to them. Thinking it over. What does it mean if you are motivated to keep your worry a secret? It's often a good indication that there is something exaggerated and unrealistic about what that worry. That's a helpful reminder, and if you start looking at the urge to secrecy in that light, it will probably help you respond to the worry. Respond to your worries in a more effective ways. Keeping your worries secret comes at a price, often a significant one, with serious negative effect of the secrecy. Try the suggestion in this chapter for experimenting with the self-disclosure a little at a time and judge it by its result, not by your anticipatory fears. Chapter 13: Specialized Worries, Sleep and Illness. Sleep. Let it happen or make it happen. Let's start with some basic. What do we do to fall asleep? Sleep is one of those activities that we allow to happen rather than make it happen. How do we do that? We create a space that's quiet, comfortable, and dark with no distraction or feature that encourage waking activity. We show up and lie down, prepared to let go of daily concern and activity, and we give the process a little time to occur. Trying to sleep is a contradiction because sleep is an activity that doesn't respond well to effort. Think of one of your favorite meals. How likely are you, when you serve this meal, to scrutinize what you do with teeth and tone? How likely you are to urge yourself to get more flavor and enjoyment from the meal and judge how well you are doing at getting that flavor and enjoyment? Probably not so likely. Instead, you sit down at an appropriate place with the appropriate utensil. Have you beverage of choice, put the food in your mouth and allow the experience to unfold. Even though it's the same dish, it's probably a slightly different experience each time. But you don't score it like an Olympic event unless you are judging an iron chef. Many of our daily activities are the type of requiring effort in which effort is rewarded. The more persistently I teach my dog to stay off the sofa, the better she will behave. At least as far as the sofa is concerned, the more regular effort I put into my workout, the better my physique and muscle tone and so on. Sleep is not like that. The activity of sleep is more like simple relaxation, enjoying the flavor of your food or having an orgasm. You arrange the right condition, go through a few simple steps and enjoy what comes your way. You don't struggle to create the experience because your struggle and enjoyment to this activity are mutually exclusive. Setting you up your bedroom for restful sleep. What are the right conditions? This is what sleep physiology calls sleep hygiene. It doesn't mean having clean sheets, although that's always a plus. It means creating a good environment and routine that's conducive to sleep. This means reserving your bed and bedroom for sleep, but nothing else. This may be a big adjustment for people who are plugged in 24/7. No TV in the bedroom, get it out there. Turn off your device, your phone, your notebook on other device and leave them in the living room. If you have to have something in your bedroom to divert you, one book is sufficient. Take your clock and turn it to face the wall. When people are having trouble sleeping, they often check the time, then find themselves calculating how much sleep they can get if they fall asleep right away, as if sleep were some kind of time exercise. That's not conducive to sleep. Still wearing a wristwatch. Leave it on the bureau where you can reach or see it. And if you have been using a phone for an alarm clock, it probably be better to get yourself the traditional alarm clock. Even if you have your phone on mute, it probably still flashes and get your attention that way. Sleep is for letting go of the outside world, and it will have to structure your bedroom accordingly. Creating a before bed routine. How about getting ready for sleep? Here are a couple of guidelines. Disconnect from the internet and use cell phone for at least 30 minutes before going to bed. Do something a little more traditional and low-key, like a reading or watching TV in another room. Pick a program that's not really engrossing or stimulating. Talk shows are designed for this, and one that won't interfere with your scheduled bedtime. Let go of the evening snack. If you are sensitive to caffeine, limit any caffeinated beverage to early in the day. Go to bed at a time that will allow you to have the amount of sleep you need. Don't go to bed extra early hoping to increase your chance of getting enough sleep. That will likely ensure extra time of tossing and turning. It will probably be good to spend a few minutes with a simple relaxation exercise before going to bed, or right upon getting into bed. Like a belly breathing and meditation exercise in chapter 10, as with any relaxation technique, the key to simply go through the steps and allow whatever happens to happen. Maybe you will relax a little, maybe you will relax a lot. Just take what comes your way. Don't strive to relax yourself. Avoid napping during the day. When you sleep during the day, it often leads to less sleep in the night, and you want to get back into the automatic habit of sleeping comfortably at night. So even though it might seem like a good way to compensate for lost sleep, it probably just leads to more lost sleep. Get on a regular bedtime schedule and stick to it. How soon will you or I fall asleep tonight? We just don't know exactly. The main point is to create the right condition for sleep and allow whatever happen to happen. Worry about sleep is just worry. Worry about sleep usually takes the form of these thoughts. What if I don't get enough sleep? The overwhelming majority of time, the answer to this question is that you will get sleepy. It's a self-correcting problem. It's not like the problem of, for example, dehydration. If I don't get enough water, I have to specifically correct that deficit. My body would not generate water on its own, and I have to find it and ingest it. When I get sleepy, my body will induce sleep. My main task with respect to sleep is to stay out of my own way and allow sleep to occur rather than to make it occur. Your best response to worry about trouble sleep will include handling worry about sleep separately from handling sleep. Handle worries about sleep the same way you handle any other comment from uncle or argument. Treat it as a worry. Don't get fooled into taking the content very seriously and humor the worries. Handle the activity to sleep in accordance with the sleep hygiene suggestion above. What to do if you find it hard to fall asleep? Don't lie there. for hours trying to fall asleep. Give it a reasonable amount of time, perhaps half an hour. If you are unable to fall asleep within that time, I suggest you to get up and engage in a brief period of activity. Chapter 14. Closing thoughts. There is something funny about worry. So there you have it. Chronic worry is not an intruder or a disease you have to oppose. It's a bunch of reactions that appear in your internal world, in your mind, when you try too hard to control and oppose unwanted worrisome thoughts. Chronic worry tricks you into taking it seriously and opposing it, just like a matador trick a bull into charging man armed with swords and spikes. Yeah, a method to trick a bull with a red cap. Chronic worry tricks you with a phrase like, what if? When you fall for the trick, you end up arguing with uncle argument and filling new sauce at a banquet that you had hoped to enjoy. And the best way to diffuse the situation with uncle argument is to playfully humor him. This might not be as hard as it seems because there's something funny about worry. I give frequent workshops on worry and anxiety at the professional mental health conferences around the country. These are usually held in a large hotel or conference facility with room for many workshops to occur simultaneously. After break times, as participants from other meetings walk away my table, they often have an interesting reaction. When people see the sign for the meeting about worry, they frequently laugh and say something like this, "Oh, I could really use this meeting." Nobody seems to do that at the table for meeting on depression, schizophrenia, eating disorder, and so on. There is something funny about worry. We can recognize it. If we are open to it, it helps change our relationship with worry when we do. Responding to chronic worry without humor is like drilling a tooth without local anesthesia. You can do it if you have to, but it's so much easier and more comfortable with humor.